Yeah, it should be on.
Roger. I think we are going out to another Southern Porch on another Tuesday. Let me see what's going on.
Happy January to everybody. Hope you're doing well. And so what do you have for us, Rick?
Well, we put out there last week when we were finishing up, and then, we're going live. And then we said today we would talk a little bit about. Let me turn the volume down. Actually, come across. And we said today, why don't we talk a little bit about this concept of critical thinking and is there any value in critical thinking? What is critical thinking? How do we apply critical thinking? And do we need critical thinking in today's world more than ever? And obviously, probably by my question on that, my answer is most definitively yes.
Without a doubt. I think that one of the things that we're seeing out there that's disturbing is divisiveness. Mm-hmm. That what we've come to is I don't want to hear your opinion. I don't want to hear your side. That has no value to me. What has value to me is for me to win. And now people move to win at all costs. And so the idea of us sitting down and working through something, that doesn't seem to exist. It's more like we're in a gang fight, jump in, and whoever comes out is the winner.
Right. And I think the first thing we have to understand is when we say critical thinking, we're not talking about being critical of people. Critical in this case is a word meaning for analytical or thought process and giving thought to it. And what you're saying is, yes, unfortunately, the world we live in right now is my way or the right way, or my way,
or the highway.
Or the highway.
My way or the highway.
Yeah, my way's the right. My way's the right way.
Yeah,
or the highway.
I don't want to hear your opinion. Don't care. Do not care. I want to win. And I love the phrase, Rick. Don't confuse me with the facts.
Yeah.
And that seems to be a piece of it. Sure, with your facts, I'm sure that's what you believe. But with my facts, this is the correct way to look at it. You need to understand my facts, and there's where the critical thinking is out the door. It's like, no, we're not going to examine that and see if there's any weight to that. We're just going to, again, it's the power of the win. That's really what we're talking about here that gets scary. Winning at what I would say all costs. It's just if I've got to step on you to be right, then I'm stepping on you. That's just the way it works. And I think that it is a self-defeating cycle, because it's like I keep burning bridges as if I'm never going to have to retreat. And what's going to happen at some point is I'm going to burn a bridge that I'm going to need to go back over. And what am I going to do then? That people have offended people, people have hurt people, and people in an effort to be right, but 10 years later, what was right isn't what's right now, and things shift. And I think that is very confusing to people. And what I think has happened, Rick, and tell me what you think on this. I think it has frozen people. I think people are afraid to state or take a position because of the fight of it. They're just going to be, I'm not going to openly do this. I'm not going to openly do that. But within my own self, I know what I believe and where I believe it. And when given any power, boom, I'm using it.
Yeah. And no, I agree with you. And as we talk about critical thinking, we have to put in the term critical tolerance. Same kind of concept is I'm always amazed that I'll find people who will think that, well, if you listen to try to understand another person's perspective, that means they're going to somehow brainwash you or bring you to the darker side or something. And I think the first lesson we have to learn is in critical thinking and critical tolerance is no, you can listen to try to understand another person's perspective, but that doesn't mean you have to accept that thought process or perspective. And whether that applies in religion or in politics or whatever the situation is, yeah, you're going to have people that will have one opinion, but instead of, again, trying to refute, where do we put our time and effort? Because it does bring us into a mode of freezing, because if we say, well, I can't listen, or I'm afraid to listen to the other side, but critical thinking also encompasses a very scary thought, and that is, guess what? You might find out you need to change your perspective on something. And that's where we get frozen, is when we, again, tell ourselves that, no, I am vulnerable, not vulnerable, but it is possible I may change my way of thinking on something. I think you and I have spoken about it in these sessions before, but I've heard many a Christian author who talks about their first book, and then 20 years later they go up and give a talk, and they're kind of saying, what was I thinking about?
That's not what I believe now.
Yeah, that I've grown.
Wow, where did I come up with that idea? Yeah, that's very interesting to see that especially with Christian authors, how much through the years they change and how much they would adjust what they had written before. But at the time they wrote it, boy, they were, but this is what I believe, this is what I stand for, this is what it's all about. And so that's the dynamics that exist. You know, we've come to a place where when you take critical thinking and critical discourse away from people, what they're putting in its place, Rick, is what we call white noise. Mm-hmm. So that you see people in which somebody's trying to bring forth an idea, and they're not going to fight against it. They're going to stare at them, and in their mind, they're going to quickly shift to white noise. You better be making a point.
Yep.
But in truth, they're not really listening. I think that is a huge word out there in the field of critical thinking, is listening. You know, to have a critical discourse, you have to be listening. And people really struggle with that. We're not really training people to do that well. It's like a tennis match.
Right.
One person is, knocks the ball over the fence, and the idea is for us to have a game, you knock it back. And so as we volley the ball, the game develops. But what we've got now is one person serves and the other person just watches the ball go by.
And it is, and you're exactly right. I agree with you. It's listening, and then we put that other phrase in there, listening for understanding. I remember this weekend, I watched the Da Vinci Code again on TV.
Yeah, with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, and I remember when that first came out, a lot of churches put time and effort into debunking what was being taught in the Da Vinci Code versus trying to explain, Opus Dei and the Templar Knights and bring it into education. But they felt it was their job to debunk everything, that this is all false and lies.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to explain and help people understand why did the Opus Dei come through, and why was there the thought process that Christ might have survived the resurrection, and why were the Templar Knights part of this movement, and then why were the Templar Knights executed on Friday the 13th, basically by the King of France, and so for me it was fun just to go back into, start researching some of these things and seeing how some of these beliefs and have come around because of that belief system. And again, guess what? I'm not a Templar Knight. I didn't secretly join the Opus Dei this weekend, but I feel like I'm better.
But that would have you believe that, and that's one of the things in all this, Rick, that really concerns me is the fear of understanding. People don't want people to listen because that's where you understand, and that's how you understand. You can't understand unless you are actively listening and volleying back and forth with another person to understand what you believe, what you think. It's almost that we've come to a point of being fearful of that. It's like, don't want to hear it, don't want to look at it. That somehow, I love what you said there. If I watch the Da Vinci Code, all of a sudden I'm going to be hypnotized. They would have you believe. And all of a sudden I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to become a Templar Knight or France or where. It's like, oh my goodness.
Or in the simplest form, I'm going to change my position on the resurrection because I watched the movie.
Yes, yeah. And they would have you believe it, that a movie has that level of power, and like people can't process that information and say, okay, here's what I'm hearing, and teaching people not to fear the information, but to disseminate the information. It's like we don't want to have any understanding of the information, as it's gonna mess with us. And so what we do is we get around, Rick, the same people saying the same thing in the same way. And what's scary about that to me, when you start taking critical thinking out, and you moving that white noise in, there seems to be a large amount of cult work in that. That cults do that. Well, that's yeah. Let's live in this compound. Let's believe this phrase. If you don't believe this phrase, you don't get to come into the compound, and the world's going to come to an end. It's like, wow, boy, what were we thinking in this?
Yeah,
and the issue is that we weren't thinking.
We weren't. And anytime you ever hear someone say you cannot challenge authority out there, then run fast, because that does bring you into the cult mindset that you cannot question authority. And actually, I heard something else, because I know one of your favorite phrases is birds of a feather flock together.
It's true. It's true. It's what I've noticed as I've grown up, Rick, is that all the people who like red shirts run with all the people who like red shirts. It's sad, but it's so true.
And what's interesting, I found out also just reading this week, is that when you watch birds that are flying, whether it be swallows or any type of bird that always flies in motion, again, I would have thought, well, that means there's a lead bird and everybody's following the lead bird. But scientifically, they've proven that no, there's not a lead bird.
Hey, there it is.
But what it's called a communal mind. And,
yes.
And these birds start thinking alike. And the transference to that is what you're saying is so true. We start getting into communal minds, and if we are thinking with what they call stinking thinkers, then we're going to be having stinking thinking. But if we get around people who have communal minds of wanting to understand, wanting to learn, wanting to grow, guess what? We'll be joining that communal mind.
And the other side of this, Rick, is critical thinking. Let's just be up front with our viewers. Critical thinking is hard work. It's work. And if you're lazy, then you absolutely are not going to like critical thinking.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so you again, in the birds of a feather, a lot of weak thinkers around a lot of weak thinkers, and that is a scary place. And then you have again strong thinkers all sitting around with strong thinkers, and we're not better for that model. That's probably what we're saying today in this show. That is not the best for our society. What's best is that we mesh it. We mesh it. We put the weaker thinkers with the stronger thinkers, and we trust the process, that there's a process involved in critical thinking, and it's hard work, but you come out better. You're a better person when you do some critical thinking. But there are people that have demonized. This is what kills me. They've demonized critical thinking. You know, oh no, I'm not gonna hear that. You know, and that always brings me back. I'm gonna show my age here, Rick. Brings me back to the 70s. Rock music. And boy, that was the devil was in rock music. And if you listen to rock music, then you were going to, be a reprobate.
Mm-hmm.
I vividly remember hearing that and seeing that. And, my mother did not believe that, thank goodness.
Yeah.
She let us go. And I love that music. I'm going to be right up front. Love the music. And what was interesting to me, Rick, was the fact that when I went to seminary, they didn't ask what I listened to. That wasn't one of the questions they asked for me to get into seminary. Whether I liked rock music, didn't matter. We're going to be studying this. Are you willing to show up every day and do the work? And if you do, then what we promise is we'll test that. And if you pass, we're going to give you a diploma.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived up to their part of the bargain, and I lived up to mine. I showed up. I was there. I had a seat, and I kept coming, and they graduated me. But they never asked about 70s rock music. And I'm like, why in the world did you make such a big deal about this stuff back in the day? And later on, not even an issue.
Well,
I think that confuses people.
That should confuse people, but also those that are familiar with the rock music of the late 60s or the 70s, going back even to the Woodstock Festival and listening to some of the messages that these bands were singing about were so culturally relevant. I think that's what was scary, though, is to the quote-unquote establishment. There was truth being spoken through these songs, even though, I don't know how much of the establishment listened to them, but fortunate, fortunate son.
Really?
Yeah. And they were talking back then about the inequalities of wealth and non-wealth in the Vietnam War. They were talking about the inequalities of racial injustice in these songs. They were talking about taking care of the earth in these songs long before these became popular. And that's probably why the generation, our generation, kind of brought it to somewhat of a forefront. But you're right. Critical thinking is hard work. And,
yes.
And you talk about even why I think we should be afraid and we should be scared, because you look at the founding, the true history of the founding of this country, and it's amazing. The founders had many different opinions on how this country should have been formed and how to do it. And there was a lot of discussions, but when it came to the overall process of putting down the design of this republic, I think yes, it was divine, but also much more that they were able to listen to each other and come up with a cohesive form of government that has worked.
They were willing to work through
that because they would talk about it. Yes.
Yes. And it's like we refuse to do that now. We refuse to do that on a simple level, like in a drugstore, and we refuse to do that in the Congress.
Right.
I mean, all the way through. And I'm not thinking about today. I'm thinking about 20 years from now. The next generation. What are they going to do? What happens when we have a society out there that has no ability to critically think? I think you get a cult nation, a nation of cults, and then there's a lot of division in that. And my way is bigger than your way. Then what I've seen, Rick, that kind of concerns me is that old image of when I was a child, and there was a game called King of the Hill.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is one kid would get on top of this little mound, and everybody would try to push that kid off. And so there was the motion, boy. And it seems like we're moving to that the person, the old thought probably, I guess it was in the early days of England or whatever, might equals right. The person who's the mightiest is the person who's right. And it seems like that's part of where we're moving. The king of the hill gets to make a decision. The king of the hill gets to say what's right. It's not like we're sitting and processing it and working through it. That's too much work. It's easier to hammer on each other on a hill and see who stands after the fight.
And again, as we talk about age and generational, and some of the things that I am proud of our generation and our age is, and once again, I know we spoke of this too, but when we were in university, and I remember in high school being 15, 16 years old and getting with my friends, we're not talking about a classroom, and we would be literally talking about the Bay of Pigs, or we'd be talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis that 10 years earlier had happened. We talk about the Kennedy assassination. Then we get to college and we talk about the Vietnam War. And again, not with just people of our same thought. We'd have good discussions. And then we're now to the age where universities are creating safe zones so nobody would be offended by
there it is. Yeah.
This
I want to believe this. And if nobody else believes it, what I'm now getting is to legislation to protect my idiocy. That scares me to death. I'm going to have legislation to protect my idiocy. That is so out of the box. I think, no. I think that's what universities are for. It's for us all to get together and mesh through it. And I think that, it's like, again, king of the hill. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little cone of protection up there for a group. And then everybody's going to bounce off that cone. And that they're going to be right based on legislation. Mm-hmm. I think I think that's a dangerous place to be. I think that's terrible for people. We got to watch that, and what diminishes that in my mind is critical thinking. That when you have critical thinking, and I think when you think back and you talked about whatever the issues were, it was what you would call, Rick, an open forum. Mm-hmm. And everybody's welcome, and every view is welcome. And we're going to do our best. We're not going to say at the end of it, we've come up with the only way. What we're going to say at the end of it is, we've worked on it, and this is the best we've got right now. There was never it's in concrete, it's in rock, This is the one statement, nothing else. If anything, if you live long enough, you see so many, and you brought this up just a minute ago, Christian writers who, stood up and said, this is black and this is white. And then 20 years later, they're going, I might amend that a little bit. I mean, they're not going to say I'm totally wrong and I was really, this was ridiculous. I don't ever hear them say that, but I do say I would make maybe some amendments. I would adjust it a little bit, considering everything. Now, see, and I love that, Rick, because what that really says is ideas are a living thing that they develop. That you have to work with them. They're like a plant. Mm-hmm. You've got to nurture them. You've got to feed them. You got to let the sun shine in, and through that, they grow up and they produce fruit. And I think that's, we're seemingly today fearful of that. We're fearful of letting a plant grow and develop and be what works versus us kind of trying to control that. I think we are setting ourselves up for conflict by control. I think that what we think we're doing away with conflict. I'm going to be in control. I'm going to make this happen, whether people like it or not, and there's not going to be any conflict. I'm thinking, in what fantasy world do you believe that works? It doesn't work like that.
And the work, exactly. And you know, when you talk about the hard work in it, you know, we're seeing now, and right before we went on, we talked about that, you know, Zuckerberg and Facebook is talking about changing the feeds where they've seen the embarrassment and challenges they've had of all the quote unquote fake news or the things that are written out there. And so are we a society that if we saw it on the internet, it's got to be true, versus saying, I need to find out what are the facts, what are the real facts behind these thoughts that are going out, and am I willing to put the work into researching it? Am I putting the work into questioning people about it? When someone gives you an expression or tells you a quote unquote their fact, question them. Where does this fact come from? And if it's from your cousin Joe, well, you know what? That's still not convincing enough.
Really?
But if it's from a award-winning journalist from the New York Times, maybe we could put a little bit more credence in that. And it's not, but unfortunately, we are painting a world on whatever we say, and we have the expectation that people are going to believe. And this is where the work starts coming in. It is. We have to do the work on questioning, where is this information coming from? Why are they saying this? What are the facts behind it? Is there any relevance to it? And then and going back to the same thing. And if anyone tells you don't question it, then run as fast as you can. And again, whether that's be in a political term, whether that's be in a religious term, whether that's be in a relationship term, you should always, that's the one thing we do have still in this country that I'm starting to have fear for, but we still can question, but do we have the fortitude to question?
Yeah, I love the word there, Rick, fortitude. You know, what we're really talking about is laziness. Mm-hmm. You know, when you use critical thinking, when you use and develop critical dissertation, we know a lot of people, that's hard work. I mean, you're really stepping in it, man. That's like people think, and I tell people all the time, Rick, there is a huge gap between getting married and being married. I said, anybody in the world can get married. All you got to do is show up and say, I do. But boy, when you have to be married day in, day out, that's work. And people are lazy and don't want to do the work, but they want to have the marriage. Somehow they think that people when people lived in log cabins on the plain just had it. They just worked it out. The marriage worked out. It was easy. That's insane. That thinking is lazy thinking. No, they had it hard. Mm-hmm. We have it hard. We don't live like they do, but they had to work on it. We've got to work on it. If I choose to get married to someone, hopefully what I'm saying is I'm making a commitment to work on us for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. And I just don't see people equipped. They're equipped to be hot for each other. They're equipped to be passionate for each other. They're equipped to date, and they put a lot of energy and work on dating and who they date. But they have no background, no work on being married, what it's going to take to be there day in, day out. And so they make it about 5 to 7 years and then, put a fork in them. They're done. I don't want to do, I not only do I not love you, I hear all the time, I don't like you.
Yeah.
That is the phrase. It's not about love. It's about, I don't like you. What am I doing with you? And I was working my tail off. I was working hard to capture you, to get you, to be married to you. Oh, buddy, you were the ultimate prize. And 5 years later, I don't like you. I don't want to be with you. I'm just going to get in the car and I'm going to drive off. Wow, man, what do people think? That's crazy. But I see that happening more and more out there. Over 50% of the people, have looked and said, I don't have what it takes.
And that's both within the church and outside the church.
Everywhere. It's like, because nobody, again, whether it's in the church or outside the church, Rick, lazy.
Yeah.
They just lazy. They're not willing to do the hard work. Being married, having critical thinking, having critical discourse. We want our viewers to hear hard work. You gotta hunker down. You gotta get in the mud. It's not clean, easy. All I gotta do is show up, work. That's not what it's like.
And part of that critical thing, whether it be in the marriage relationship or again in any relationship, and this is where I will challenge the politicians of today, is, you know what? There's a lot of times that we are matched, and when I mean matched, we find people that do have opposite ways of thinking. Usually a spender will marry a saver, an extrovert will marry an introvert, a person who loves excitement will marry somebody who's a little bit more calm. And guess what? But that's because these people fill some of the holes that we have, and we're talking about the divine oneness and that. But on the other hand, we forget to use what you're saying, put the idea of using this through critical thinking and through understanding that we can always come to type 2 collaborative resolutions if we're willing to talk to each other and not position ourselves, it's all about me. As soon as you and I both know, as soon as we start hearing, well, you don't do this for me, then we're never going to be able to help people understand behavioral change and going back to, once again, what do the scriptures say about each other and especially in relationship. So now we take this and yeah, I am very disappointed, I think, in the way this country is being run right now, because we don't have any intelligent discourse as far as I see. Now, this is an opinion. It's not a statement, but my opinion is based on what I do see and what I'm reading. And for someone to have the courage again to step across the aisle and try to understand what's being said, but start working on these collaborative resolutions, it's all about me. And until we get out of that phase, I'm afraid we're not going to see a lot of improvements in either marital relationships and relationships within the government organization itself. We're talking about a government shutdown in 3 days. How does the greatest nation on the earth get to these points? And it's all about not trying to understand and collaborate. And I'm not saying compromise. I'm saying collaborate. Guess what? The world's built on collaboration.
The word I'm thinking about here, Rick, is sweat equity.
Yeah.
How much sweat equity are you willing to bring in to a situation, whatever the situation may be, whether it's marriage, whether it's friendship, whether it's work, or whether it's family? One of the phrases that I say all the time to women, I say, women, if you are raising a little boy, raise them so that some other woman can live with them, or they're going to be with you your entire life. They're going to be worthless. And that is happening out there. We're raising children who can't be married to anybody, can't live with anybody. They're so self-focused. They have no critical thinking skills. They get with someone else, and they have no skill, Rick, on how to collaborate. I mean, wow, it is amazing that you had to, back in 1900 or 1800, you had to collaborate with people to get things to work. Few people could put up a barn or whatever by themselves.
Yeah.
You had to collaborate to make a marriage work. Everybody had to do the role, had a role. One person had to go milk the cow. One person had to feed the chickens. One person had to pick the peas. And because everybody did their job, then we became a unit. But people have gotten the idea that since I'm your child, it's your job to serve me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and look for someone to serve me. And wait a minute, if you want to be served and the person you pick up wants to be served, then what's the future going to look like? And where is critical thinking going to be in that? Woo, buddy! Let me tell you, you talk about some fun. That's when the fun happens, buddy. When all of a sudden, all the decorations, all the family are out of the way, and you have your own home, and you shut the door. Oh my goodness! Here I am. I'm with this person. I got to be with them tomorrow. Oh yeah, I'm in the same place. Oh, the next day. Oh yeah, next week, next month, next year. And do I have the skill set to get it done?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we're raising a flag on today. We're encouraging people to get the skill. And there's never a time that you can't get it. It's not like, well, I'm too old to think critically. No, you're never too young nor too old to be a critical thinker. You're never too old or too young to be a collaborator and to collaborate with something and to create the team, the power of the team. But when it's, I got to be the star, I am the star, there is no other but me, I certainly saw that creeping up from the 70s. Woo, people who wanted to be the star, and they scratched and clawed and did everything and tripped up to be at the top of the mountain. And I've never met anybody who said the top of the mountain was it, buddy. It really, oh boy, that was all worth it. I don't hear that at all, Rick, where people put value in. What I hear people putting value in is the team. Boy, I like the people. We seem to, we are not clones of each other.
Right.
We're willing to agree to disagree. And we gain power from the critical thinking process. Powers us, empowers us. And when somebody tries to be, quote unquote, the big dog, everything falls apart. But that's what we've got out there. That's what people are trying to do. And they're using the computer world to support that.
Well, yeah, so not only support, sometimes, propagate false information.
Ooh, good point. Good word.
So I don't know, Roger, if I can speak for you, but even at that point, so for our federal, state, local legislatures, I know for myself, I'll find time, and I think Roger will agree that he'll find time. We'll volunteer our time to come work with you. And I'm not saying this, hopefully, I know it sounds like it come across in kind of a way that seems we're building ourselves up. But no, for me, I truly would love to help teach how to communicate for understanding and collaboration. And I know Roger would too. Just let us know. We'll be there. We'll work with you. Do we have all the answers? No, but I know that we could break through a lot of the frustration if you're willing to do the work and are motivated to learn how to communicate for collaboration and resolution.
And it's tough, Rick, to be in a place, a phrase that falls out of your mouth very easily, willing to learn. Ooh, that's hard. That's a hard place for people to be. People have a willingness to be right. They work hard at being right. They don't want to hear anything but you're right. You're the one. You're it. And they struggle with other thoughts, other ideas, other collaborations. And we are weaker for it's what we're saying today. We're not as strong as we can be. A marriage, a workplace, a church, or whatever is weaker because there is no working through, working with, developing and having that critical discourse. That is like going to the gym, the emotional gym. You're out there doing push-ups. You're out there doing emotional pull-ups. You're becoming stronger every day by doing this process. But people are spending time avoiding that process. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to sit down. Now, if you're willing to come to our place and tell me I'm right, oh man, people want you there every day to come in and validate their superiority. Wow, that's a scary place to be. But it's a tougher place when you say, I want to come in and I want to help you. And that's, again, you know what I'm thinking, Rick? That's why you're paying certain coaches big money, because they have the ability to come in. I'm really focused on Clemson football, who was Dabu Sweeney, who and he followed one of the Bowden boys. And when he took the job, number one, I think everybody went, what? Who? They couldn't, boy, what we've really gone down the toilet. But he came in with a vision. And he said, guys, you got to work. You got to get down in there and do the work that I believe will move us in this direction. And he was right, man. They became national champions. Wow. That's coaching. That's developing young minds, young players. I mean, I believe Clemson is not only a better football team, I think it's a smarter and stronger football team. And I think it develops a culture out there. It's developing a culture. This is the culture of Clemson football, is we've got to do the work. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, ooh-wee. And a coach that's able to convey that, focus on that, and develop that, wow. Again, what the product of that is national championship. And the other side is, I want to coach, we the greatest, we the best, we going to do this, we going to stomp on everybody else. And the willingness of a team, if we've got to hurt them to win, then we're going to hurt them. One of the things I heard this week, Rick, that really blew my mind about college football was back in the day, certain teams refused to go to bowl games with a team. And what? Well, the money, the prestige, all that. And they said, no, what they looked at was the cost. Our boys didn't want to go get hurt, and your team didn't mind hurting people to win. And I think that kind of dynamics is what's going on with critical thinking and critical discourse. We're just removing ourselves from that, and we're coming in to letting the bullies be at the top. Whoever is willing to play dirty, hurt people, no, that's not playing the game. That's being a bully. And so it looks as if we're in that kind of mindset, whether it be a marriage or whether it be a government or whatever, where they're being driven by bullies. And I don't think we're better for that. I think we're weaker for that. And we're developing victims. When you take critical thinking and critical discourse out, what you're putting in its place is victimhood. You got a whole lot of victims in there. And I think that's a nasty place to be.
So, so we're talking about we have to, first of all, be willing to listen for understanding. Understanding does not mean you're accepting. It just means you're trying to hear what the other person is saying and why they come to that point. In the realm of what we call critical tolerance, tolerance doesn't mean you have to be tolerant of things that are illegal, things that are immoral, things that are against nature or society. And there's a lot of things we should not be tolerant of. But in just different opinions, yeah, we means we have to be willing to be tolerant, to listen to another side and understand where they're going. And then as we're listening, then it's okay to question. In fact, you need to question, and hopefully if someone is trying to help you understand their position, they will accept questioning, and then we have to verify where their information is coming from. And that does take research. It does take additional talking. It's asking, where does that fact come from? Then the hardest part is going to be pushing out there, accepting that maybe you might have to change your way of thinking regarding a certain issue. And this is where growth comes in. I'm going to go all the way back around. Listening for understanding doesn't mean you have to accept everything. But on the other hand, we do have to accept there are going to be times we may have to change our way of thinking when we have a better understanding of what's going on. And then it's talking about if there are issues within a marriage, a relationship, let's talk about how do we collaborate on getting these issues addressed. And I'll qualify that one more time. It's not compromise. Compromise still means somebody gives something up. But, how do we brainstorm? How do we bring all the ideas to the table and then walk away with a collaborative mindset and a communal mindset? And there's nothing wrong with that concept of communal mindset if it's driven in the right directions. Because, again, we'll go back to how God created the birds. They're created so they don't run into buildings, and they're created so they don't just fall out of the sky. And so guess what? Right now, I think we are running into a lot of buildings. We're falling out of the sky way too often as a community. We have to figure out how to think in a communal sense again. And it's not all about me, myself, and I'm right, everybody else is wrong. But being mature enough to say, I want to understand why they're coming from this position. And it does take work.
Yeah, and good. I'm glad you used the magic W word. Yeah, I mean, all of this, it's really tough on people to listen. It really is a skill to listen. It's easy to have an idea and to force it out on people. And just because you have the ability to force out an idea does not make that idea right. And it takes a lot to listen actively, and to think critically and to have critical discourse. That is work. Oh my goodness. And it's like our concern on this show today is that people are tiring themselves. They don't want to mess with that. They don't want to do the work. And what we're going to see in that is things are going to crumble. I remember seeing a show on TV where they showed a balcony that people were staying. I think it was in Indonesia or whatever, in a building, and it looked very sturdy, and there were hundreds of people going in and out, and in a microsecond, it all fell with them on it. Hundreds of people, all of a sudden on the balcony, boom, it fell. And why? It was not constructed correctly. They did not use the correct material. They did not put it together. Now, did it look good? Yes. Had it worked before? Yeah. But as it was working and people were using it, it was getting weaker and weaker and weaker because it did not have the fundamental strength. Mm-hmm. And part of what we're saying here on the show today, Rick, is critical thinking, critical discourse is a strengthening element. And it makes the structure sturdier and safer.
Good point, yeah.
And so, you know, even though it's cheaper and easier to use or not use certain material, it's dangerous to do that. And that's part of what we're saying today. When you take critical thinking and critical discourse out, and you're not willing to do the work of active listening, you're weakening the structure of relationships. You know, a couple that does not actively communicate with each other, the clock is ticking. We're saying that right up front. Clock is ticking. It's only a matter of time before that relationship is going to fall.
Yeah.
Now, is it going to look good on Facebook? Yeah, it's going to look good. They're going to smile. They're going to do the pictures. They're going to wave, and everybody's going to say, and we've certainly heard this over and over again, I can't believe those people are breaking up. And the truth is, it's because they showed you a picture that was a falsehood. Mm-hmm. It was not the truth. If they would have presented the truth to you, you could have possibly come in, possibly helped, possibly strengthened it. But when you're left out in the cold and uninformed, it's just the clock is ticking. It's just a matter of time, Rick, before something falls. People are hurt. You know, we somehow want to act like if I don't want to be married, fine, we just move on. You know, no harm, no foul. That's a lie. It is harmful. There is a foul. People and children are hurt every day because of the consequences of the lack of active listening, the consequences of active working together in discourse. There is a payback involved, and we're trying to raise the flag to people and say, woo, people, we love you. And I know it feels good to be right, but maybe you're getting the feel good of right, but the infrastructure is crumbling. The things that's keeping the structure strong and keeping the balcony up is weakening every moment. And there's very few times, Rick, I've seen where something, you know, a marriage goes bad in a day.
Yeah.
You know, that a company goes down the toilet in a day. You know, that's why I love watching certain things on TV, to see the process. You know, if I watch Dateline or the Escape Channel, you know, people don't end up murdering people in a day. One day, I just decide I'm not putting up with this. I'm going to murder them. I never see that show. No, there were months in the planning, years willing to work, and all of a sudden, then the person starts putting antifreeze in the person's drink, and you're like, what? Yeah, there was a process involved, and
no critical thinking, because
no.
If you're going to kill your spouse, guess who the police are always going to look at first? So,
right.
So watch these shows. You can have that idea.
Well, and what you're going to walk away from, I would like to think, is work.
Yeah.
Is at the background part of what we're talking about with critical thinking is critical thinking. Relationships take work. we are not trying to play out there that it is easy to be in any relationship, whether it be a marital relationship, a work relationship, a society relationship. It's work. You got to get in there. You got to get dirty. You got to get sweaty. You got to have that sweat equity into something. And if you do that, then is there a guarantee? No, there's no guarantees. But we could say the chances are things are going to work out. It's going to, one of the things it brings into a relationship, I think, when you have critical thinking, critical dissertation, and active listening, is flexibility. That, when people start having to be right, they emotionally get brittle, Rick, and they're easily shattered, and that's their excuse for being ugly to others. But when people have put a lot of sweat equity, they've done the work, then the interesting thing is stuff is going to happen in life. Bad stuff is going to happen in life. And what you see on the backside of that is that people, because they put the sweat equity, they're flexible. Mm-hmm. They don't throw up their hands and say, I give up. They say, oh man, I need to hunker down. I need to work harder. And they do what it takes to get it to work. And we need more of that in every aspect of life out there right now. And I think that's important.
Exactly. As we look at our relationships that we're in life, all the major world religion wisdoms have a common theme that runs through it, and that's taking the focus off of I. In the Christian theology, Dr. Tim Jennings calls it the remedy, but the fact that Christ came and taught us to take the focus off the selfish nature of the person and learn to be selfless. And so if we can just start working with that thought process today, that I am not the center of the universe.
But that's hard. That's hard work, Rick.
It is hard work.
That's hard work.
And our friend Kim, I remember he always talks about he's going to give up the job as CEO of the world. But he said that as a sign of a lesson to all of us, that we are not the CEOs of the world and that it's not all about us. And guess how much better, how much easier, how much durable, how much stronger relationships will be when the I is not involved in it and the remedy is taking away this concept of selfish and becoming selfless. So several things to be thinking about hopefully this week. I know Roger always gets me thinking about things and the wisdom that he shares each week. And there's a lot of things I got to enumerate on this week and start seeing how I apply to my life. But that's going to be our challenge to you. And hopefully you'll take some of this and take it out in the world. Because again, that's the same thing. If we just keep it to ourselves, then it has no value. We got to take it out there into the world and start applying some of these ideas of critical thinking, critical tolerance, getting rid of the selfish and becoming more selfless, becoming the remedy versus the cause. And so we do have a new website on our Facebook page that you're looking at now, or when you look at it, you'll see the link to the website. We have a friend to thank about that, but we'll bring that up in the future sometimes if it was a very generous offer who did it for us, but I'm not quite sure right now how he wants us, if he wants to communicate his kind offer. So when that comes about, but if he does, we'll be happy to promote that. And but he did a great job, and we'd like to get your feedback on what you think about the Facebook page, the website. And as I said, you just go to the top of this page and click on it and see a little bit more. Roger, anything else?
What would be the address of the website?
It's Southern Porch Life, LIFE.com. So
Southern Porch Life, all one word, .com. Southern Porch Life, all one word, .com, and you'll get access to a lot of our old episodes and old thinking. And as always, one of the things that Rick says I like, and I'm really behind, is if you have an issue that you're wondering about, please, you don't have to talk to us live. You can email us and tell us about it. And we promise that we'll bring it out here and we'll chew on it. That doesn't mean we're going to solve it. You know, Rick and I have not reached perfection. But the one thing we can tell you is we've not given up. We're still willing to work the program. And we're encouraging you to work it with us.
So watch for next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. and start watching. We'll let you know what our topic will be next week to be thinking about. And again, go to the website, and we'd love to hear your feedback, both either on this and as we also have started sharing. Please share if you think there's value in this video today, or if you find value in what you're hearing. Please share this video throughout the world of Facebook, and we'll see everybody next week.
Next week.
And guys, I got to get up.
High tech.
High tech.